In Saxony-Anhalt, sheer panic is spreading. Sven Schulze, in his new interview, was practically trembling when he had to say that the AfD is apparently on the verge of an absolute majority. And Friedrich Merz is probably making us another promise, the biggest lying politician on this planet. And he seriously believes that what was still possible in 2021 can be achieved again now, and possibly stop the AfD again with lies. But why that will be impossible, and look how nervous this Sven Schulze is.
I don't want this election in Saxony-Anhalt to become a protest vote against the government's work in Berlin. And I noticed that here in Saxony-Anhalt, many people are dissatisfied.
Only 17% in Saxony-Anhalt still believe that life will somehow get better for them, even though they still have a very high quality of life in Saxony-Anhalt. They live in very rural areas. And that's exactly what Sven Schulze knows, that this very index keeps falling. And that's also the sheer panic that it causes in him. What actually happens if the AfD goes in with an absolute majority? And even worse, what happens if the AfD falls short of an outright majority? And this is where it gets absolutely explosive, and I'll tell you right now, then they'd have to form a coalition with the left, which would completely destroy the CDU. And that's even at the federal level. If you want to support this channel, I would really appreciate a like and a subscription, and really listen to him.
For the very first time, a party is getting involved in the curriculum, or rather in what is taught at schools. That has never happened before, and it doesn't happen anywhere else.
And there they are again, the lies from the CDU. It does exist. It's called living democracy under the good Miss Pause. Of course, they've interfered in the schools, and yes, people are tired of having to accept the early sexualization of children. That's why there's such a huge turnout. And we parents, we can't take it anymore, that we have to be afraid when our children go to school and some kind of homosexual porn is shown there. We as parents strictly reject that, so please stick to the truth. And living democracy is just a small building block, at the same time mixing all people together. And well, parents have the right to decide for themselves. Your child is in the lower secondary track, but you want to send them to the academic track. That won't work. Now, of course, people are also naturally extremely worried that this school diploma, this Abitur, might not be as highly recognized in Saxony-Anhalt anymore. And that's where Sigmund Ulrich makes a very clear statement.
They fail with political content, so they resort to fairy tales. Perhaps in the future, quite the opposite may be true. The Abitur in Saxony-Anhalt may be especially highly regarded because we do have corresponding proposals for the education system.
Next week, after the start of the election campaign, I will add a video in the coming days where a teacher comments on this. And he says that if they implement this, it will lead to our children receiving a proper, better education again. But as I said, more about that in the new video.
The high poll numbers of the AfD are a sign of deep dissatisfaction among many voters. But with outrage and defamation from the other parties, the AfD will probably only gain even more support in the end.
Right, exactly. In many federal states, they're just trying to stop them now. It's no longer about solving the country's problems. It's only about one single question: how can I stop the AfD? And some people still remember how it happened back then in Saxony-Anhalt. Shortly before the election, it was then classified as right-wing extremist, and all those outrage campaigns were launched. And by now, while we look at the election polls, it's simply impossible to use the same tricks as before, because people now see through it and just see the CDU lies from start to finish every time they open their mouths, just like Friedrich Merz.
We fight together as the CDU. We win together, we lose together.
But this time the CDU will lose in Saxony-Anhalt. The only thing that has changed is the other fringe parties, they're already dead or about to become extinct. And this time it's just not that easy anymore to poach from the other parties. But I'll say a bit more about that in a moment because that's actually the crucial point. What changed in 2021 was that they were sometimes neck and neck. And then the CDU was able to poach from, for example, the Greens, the SPD, and the FDP. They basically collected all the votes in the end, and Haseloff only centered his campaign on himself. But listen to Friedrich Merz for a moment. What he's saying there, we're going to revise that in a moment because that can't really happen anymore this year.
Sven Schulze, who is really doing an excellent job as Minister President in Saxony-Anhalt, who quickly grew into Rainer Haseloff's role, helped him win this election. And 5 years ago, exactly 5 years ago, we already had the situation where we were far behind.
Back then, the CDU won by a huge margin because they took votes away from all the other parties. So being far behind, that was 27 to 26 in favor of the AfD. And then they ran a campaign focused on individual candidates. Then they went ahead and classified the AfD as right-wing extremist. Haseloff stepped forward and said, "With us, there is mainstream conservative politics." As a result, the Greens, SPD, FDP, everyone came forward and said, "We need a tactical campaign." The left didn't do that back then, and that's why they remained quite stable. The other parties were punished extremely harshly for it back then. They never recovered in Saxony-Anhalt, never managed to gain more votes again, but instead kept falling further and further down. This time though, for the SPD, it's about whether they'll even get in at all. For the SPD, everything is at stake. This time they can't just go and say, "We're supporting Sven Schulze because the SPD's votes are so crucial just to be part of it at all." The Greens are basically dead. They can do that with their marginal 3 to 4%.
People have realized it. They want to see for themselves, and they're just really fed up because the real problems in this country are simply being ignored by those in power.
And above all, people are being lied to from start to finish. And this time, even more voters understood it. And in the next elections, even more voters will understand. You can already see that now in North Rhine-Westphalia and Lower Saxony. And that's exactly why Sven Schulze is in a state of absolute panic. It's not that the AfD could form the government on its own, but the panic is about what happens if they don't. Then the firewall against the left party would have to fall because that would be the lesser evil. And it would destroy this CDU even further if they work together with people who want to shoot the rich.